And so now I'll go to Philip Cross, Senior Fellow, Macdonald-Laurier Institute.
Okay, besides my work with the Macdonald-Laurier Institute, I suspect the real reason I'm here is my 36 years at CmteCmte, so I'll try to bring an insider's perspective to a lot of these issues. Most of the commentary surrounding this bill is focused on the yin and yang of independence and accountability at StatCan. This trade-off certainly does exist. No organization can be truly independent unless it controls its own budget, but that would negate any accountability to the taxpayer. However, based on 36 years of working at StatCan, I would argue there has been excessive emphasis on the virtues of independence and not enough on the importance of accountability. To start, it is a mistake to frame the question of StatCan's independence solely in relation to external factors. Calls for more independence play into the myth that StatCan is a passive, defenseless victim of forces beyond its control. StatCan, to a very large extent, controls its own reputation and destiny, something that is not discussed enough either internally or in external forums such as this hearing or in the media. Internal processes establish StatCan's reputation for accuracy, bipartisanship, and respecting confidentiality, without which its relevance and independence would be open to question. There are many existential threats to Statistics Canada that do not involve its independence. For example, I can think of few things that would compromise StatCan's reputation more than a proliferation of the type of high-profile hires we've seen recently, such as in the Labour Force Survey in 2014 and the census in 2017. If ever the public or users lose confidence in the accuracy of StatCan data, it would take years to regain. As the Dutch saying goes, trust arrives on foot but leaves on horseback. Political neutrality is even more important. If StatCan ever was found manipulating its data or analysis for the advantage of one political party over another, the hit to its reputation would be fatal. A leak of confidential data, such as tax returns, also would shake to the core the confidence Canadians have in divulging information to StatCan. It is not far-fetched for StatCan to meddle in policymaking. It already did so when it publicly endorsed evidence-based policymaking, a blatant example of pursuing its self-interest. StatCan has no business saying how policy should be made any more than what policy should be. If the electorate wants policies based on intuition, tradition, religious beliefs, or even phases of the moon, that is irrelevant to StatCan's basic function of making available the best possible data. Nor does StatCan face the external world alone. When faced with budgetary or other challenges, StatCan has demonstrated considerable skill in forging alliances with other federal government departments and external alliances with a wide range of government, media, academics, and other data users. The full range of the latter is on display in the 2010 controversy. The list of organizations supporting a mandatory census numbered in the hundreds. A last resort in preserving StatCan's integrity and independence is going to the media about attempts to interfere with its operations, up to and including the resignation of the chief statistician. The latter card has not always been played skillfully, but it remains useful when not devalued by overuse. There is another risk to overemphasizing StatCan's independence. Some people think that reflexively taking positions opposed to the government of the day proves independence, an error made by the first parliamentary budget officer. Automatically adopting a particular point of view, irrespective of the facts, reveals a slavish devotion to dogma and doctrine, the very opposite of independence. The Bank of Canada is a good example of how an institution can be independent, yet work closely with the government of the day. Ultimately, complete independence is not possible or even desirable. Even StatCan does not want the absolute independence some people champion, since it would mean losing its seat at the table when senior government officials discuss their plans and priorities. Before being granted StatCan more independence, StatCan has to demonstrate that it can be trusted to put accountability of the public ahead of its self-interest. Its record is mixed at best. It regularly curries favor with select media outlets at the expense of others, something no public institution should do since everyone pays taxes and all media should be treated equally regardless of political views. A recent example of StatCan manipulating public opinion was asking senior managers to write down their IT complaints and then getting a friendly journalist to make an access to information request. This gives the illusion of involuntarily giving up information when in fact self-serving information was being deliberately planted. This put its own interest ahead of accountability to the public. The chief statistician's attempt in 2016 to intimidate the public by threatening to resign if computer support was not repatriated also put StatCan's interests above the public's as embodied by the government. All these are the actions of an organization that needs to be held to account, not rewarded with more independence. A potential risk in the future is StatCan ignoring the proliferation of private sector data, such as last month's introduction of ADP payroll data, that could lead to fewer surveys. Only by holding it accountable to taxpayers can one be sure that StatCan will not simply continue doing some surveys out of self-interest or habit. There has been much discussion of the process of appointing a chief statistician and not enough about his departure or removal, which in practice has been the more common problem. Thinking back to the last 8 chief statisticians, clearly some filled the position well and some were mediocre. Largely forgotten is that the organization I joined in the late 70s was in tatters, subject to investigations and an overhaul of its management practices to rebuild its reputation. The challenge that it has proved difficult, if not impossible, to predict ahead of time who will or will not make a good chief statistician, because the circumstances and skills required can change rapidly. Making a brief appearance in front of House and Senate committees is unlikely to produce better results. Inevitably, a chief statistician will be appointed whose skills are not those required during his or her tenure. This is not necessarily of great concern, especially with a term limit of 5 years. Plenty of organizations in Ottawa have to endure similar or longer tenures of poor leadership. Only those with weak internal cultures, which certainly does not describe StatCan, suffer lasting damage. In fact, organizations often emerge from periods of stress, which can be positive or negative, stronger and more focused. I can think of 4 instances where this was true at StatCan in my experience. The 70s turmoil, the budget cuts from canceling and then reinstating the 1986 census, the 1990s expansion of provincial economic statistics, and the transition to a new chief statistician amid the upheaval surrounding the 2011 census. All were traumatic to live through, all ultimately strengthened the organization.
Okay, thank you.